Hello, my name is Alexander Mordvintsev. I'd like to say thank you to the SIGGRAPH conference organizers for selecting my artwork Hexells for the conference exhibition and for giving me this opportunity to present my art and my research to the conference audience. First I'll talk about Deep Dream, the project that I did around 6 years ago. Then I'll talk about my later deep neural network visualization experiments, and finally about my most recent work, differentiable self-organizing systems and neural cell automata. So, Deep Dream. I joined Google in the year 2014, where I got into one of the few teams that started adopting recent deep neural networks to production tasks. And I got surprised by what they could do. I mean, I had some computer vision background, and I thought I have a pretty clear idea of what's possible and what's not with computers, and those things were definitely exceeding my expectations. So I decided that I have to figure out how do they work. To my surprise, there were already hundreds of papers that were adopting yet another neural network architecture to yet another problem or data set, but very few that were really trying to look under the hood and figure out what's going on. One of the papers that inspired my research is called Deep Inside Convolutional Neural Networks. In one of the experiments, authors were using input image optimization to produce class visualizations by pre-trained neural network. Resulting patterns looked very promising to me. Another source of inspiration was the paper that introduced the concept of adversarial examples, imperceivable image modifications that fool the neural network. In this video, I'm trying to visualize the basic idea behind Deep Dream, which can be formulated as whatever you see in this image, I want more of it. Deep Dream was one of many experiments we tried to understand what's going on inside deep neural networks. For example, we noticed that maximizing activations of individual neurons of a pre-trained network reveals the world of patterns that resemble parts of objects that the network was trained to classify. We published our findings in the interactive article that's called Feature Visualizations. Around that time, my wife convinced me that the research I do can also be treated as art. Together we started doing prints, exhibitions and artistic collaborations. For example, this is one of my favorite videos that was made together with our friend musicians from St. Petersburg. In another article that's called Differentiable Image Parameterizations, we explored ways of representing images for image generation through backpropagating to the neural network input. We studied decorrelated spectral representations of images, compositional pattern producing networks that are essentially tiny neural networks that map point coordinates into pixel colors and have some attractive properties like infinite resolution of resulting images. We also experimented with generating objects that lie beyond the domain of RGB 2D images, for example, images that have alpha masks or coherent textures for the 3D models that may have very fragmented UV parameterizations, such as those that are coming from photogrammetry. To achieve this, we employed differentiable rendering, which happens to be a very hot topic in computer graphics right now. We put a lot of effort into making sure that our results are easily reproducible within just a few minutes using Google Colab notebooks. Unfortunately, during working on this video, I realized that some of the notebooks happen to be broken because of the changing dependencies. I'm going to fix those notebooks soon, but this event made me want to include another recent project into this presentation. It's called deepdream.c. I made it to celebrate the 6th anniversary of rendering the first Deep Dream images. It's also a response to increasing fragility and complexity of modern software. It implements neural network inference, adversarial example generation, and pattern hallucination with less than 900 lines of C code. I'm only using technologies that are available starting from the 80s years of the last century but are still widely used today. std.io is the only library header it includes. Now I would like to talk about my most recent effort, Self-Organizing Systems project. The Hexells Demo that was included into SIGGRAPH' Art Exhibition was a part of it. Self-organizing systems consist of a large number of locally interacting agents that work together towards some shared global goal. Such systems can be observed everywhere in nature, from microscopic to global scales. Those systems are highly robust and adaptive, to the degree that's unmatched by current human technology. This project was mainly inspired by a presentation called What Bodies Think About that Professor Michael Levin gave at NeurIPS 2018. Watching this presentation, I realized that some of the amazing properties of living systems can be modeled by using differentiable programming that also powers the current generation of deep neural networks. We refer to this idea as differentiable self-organization. Generally speaking, differentiable self-organizing system consists of a neural controller that is shared by a population of agents interacting in a simulated environment during the limited time span. The whole system is evaluated against an objective function that measures the similarity between current system behavior and the desired. End-to-end differentiability allows propagation of the gradient towards the neural controller, steering the system behavior towards the target specification. We implemented this principle in a neural cell automata model, or neural CA. Neural CA operates on a uniform grid, where the state of each cell is represented by a number of real values, 3 of which are visible as RGB color channels. Cells iteratively update their states using the information collected from their 3x3 neighborhoods. Cell perception is also affected by the local orientation vector. Smooth manipulation with those vectors allow projection of the resulting patterns into arbitrary rotated vector fields. In our first experiment, we trained a number of cell automata model to grow and persist predefined patterns starting from a single seed cell, trying to mimic the development and regeneration of a multicellular organism. Interactive demo that accompanies the article allows readers to play with the resulting models and put them into situations not seen during training. In another line of experiments, we employ VGG-based perceptual texture loss or inception-based feature visualization losses to train cell automata models that synthesize textures rather than pixel-perfect patterns. Interestingly, we don't enforce stability of the produced textures, so our method accidentally turns static targets to life. Regular structures tend to produce particularly interesting behaviors, trying to build global order from local interactions only. In our Distill publication, we explore various interesting properties of cell automata models, such as their ability to operate on a grids that have different structure than used during training, or capability to synchronize and produce coherent patterns even when parts of the grid updated with substantially different traits. The capability of neural CAs to operate in out-of-training situations is pretty spectacular. For example, we observed the capability of 2 different cell automatons to coexist and cooperate on the same grid in case they share a common ancestor checkpoint or one is fine-tuned version of another. This enables interactive painting with living brushes that were independently trained to synthesize different textures. Capabilities of neural cell automata span beyond image generation. For example, in this experiment we trained a neural CA to recognize MNIST digits. Pixels that constitute digit must talk to their neighbors to figure out their global shape. They should also be ready to reconsider their decision in case pattern changes. It's also possible to train an adversarial rule that will steer the system into wrong decision. System generally manages to recover into correct state after removing the adversarial cells. Interestingly, additional restrictions make self-organizing systems even more robust. Adjacent grid locations of the model you see here can only communicate through isotropic diffusion of their state vectors. So the resulting system becomes a variant of a classical reaction-diffusion model, where only the reaction term can be trained by optimization. It's now a space-time continuous system of PDEs that's invariant to grid resolution and orientation. They can be applied to arbitrary manifolds that have a diffusion operation. Models trained in 2 dimensions even generalize to higher dimensional space. Neural cell automata models can be surprisingly compact. For example, the behavior you see here is described by just 588 parameters and easily fits into a shader. Such simple models can be potentially implemented as tiny electronic circuits. We are also constantly looking for new problems and models to apply the principles of differentiable self-organization. Thank you for your attention. SIGGRAPH conference rules required me to record this video in a couple of months before the conference. Some of the results shown here are already public, some will be published a little bit later, and future me will be happy to answer your questions. Thank you again.